Um, so as you just heard, I'm Andrew Friedman. I'm Mashable Science Editor. I'm here with Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz. Um, you may know him from becoming a meme at the State of the Union via Twitter, just from one very innocent C-SPAN shot. And also from playing a very key role in the Iran nuclear negotiations, which are still ongoing. So I guess my first question is, in terms of the value of bringing actual hard science into very difficult international diplomacy like that, I feel like that's rare. Maybe it isn't so rare. It's done to some extent during the climate talks. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious as to your experience with bringing science into that in such a central role.
Well, first of all, Andrew, as you said, of course, in climate, I think it is being brought to bear, although we could use a bit more of it, especially in certain climate discussions in certain parts of this town. But in terms of something like the Iran negotiations, it proved to be quite important because clearly the objective of the negotiation is one that leads to, very severe restrictions, in this case on the Iranian nuclear program, but in a way that allows them to maintain at least a long-term trajectory towards a nuclear power program, and that requires balancing a lot of different technical issues. I think that's what's maybe not often captured, that there's lots and lots of different ways to put things together to try to achieve the objectives, and that's I think was what I helped to do with my counterpart, Ali Salehi, the head of the Iran nuclear organization. So I hope we get over the finish line at the end of June, and that, of course, in the long term, that Iran, in fact, demonstrates and convinces everyone that they have peaceful intentions.
Switching gears here, back to you, digital. What role do you play, and does the Energy Department play in general in driving digital innovation forward? You have these amazing national laboratories like Lawrence Livermore, Oak Ridge. You have supercomputers as assets. Mm-hmm. I'm curious how you're using them aside from, the nuclear stockpile and the very serious roles that the Energy Department has with that.
Well, I think first of all, digital innovation or technology innovation more generally has many, many facets. I mean, it could start with, and I mean this quite seriously, I think the important task that the department has been doing for the last few years, just in terms of how we present information to the public. I think we were one of the first in the government, certainly, to be able to make our information handy to smartphones, for example, and that's very important. But if I then skip ahead to what you talked about in terms of high-performance computing, the department the department and its laboratories have been the leader in driving high-performance computing in this country for decades. However, the story is an interesting one, in that for many decades, that was driven by the nuclear weapons program, always trying to get the next edge in terms of the ability to model the stockpile. Well, it's interesting. In the late 90s, we started making a transition in a certain sense of getting the science and energy programs engaged in this. And now, if you come today, we put forward our proposals now over the next 6-7 years to go to the next big step, so-called exascale computing, 10 to the 18th operations per second. And now the proposal is 70% science and the rest national security. So these tools have become absolutely tools of discovery in science and critical in the energy world. Just one example is in my last go-round at DOE as undersecretary in the Clinton years, one of the directions that we took was to start large-scale computation of combustion processes. And that has now been translated into, particularly for heavy-duty vehicles, substantially greater efficiency and lower emissions for those vehicles based upon modeling that is now of such high fidelity that it actually drives manufacturing and as I said earlier in science, discovery.
Now, this is clearly a pretty big question, but what does our energy future look like? Both near term and far term, in the next 5, 10 years, next 20 to 30 years, within most people here, like within our lifetime and then beyond.
Well, first of all, clearly my reference frame is that of a transitioning of the energy system to a lower and lower carbon system. I do think that, if anything, we're a little bit behind the game in terms of addressing the risks of global warming and climate change. So I think we will continue, first of all, the historic trend of going to lower carbon systems. But the real issue is, can we accelerate that transition fast enough to mitigate at least a large part of the risks of climate change? So how do we get there? One thing is that we will see overall in the energy system a continuing trend towards greater electrification. And electrification is a great area for multiple technologies that can provide energy with low emissions. Right now, we are seeing a large increase in natural gas usage, and that has led to some CO2 reductions, largely through marketplace displacement of coal. Of course, eventually, natural gas itself will be too carbon intensive, but we are seeing, of course, renewables penetrate dramatically, largely associated with cost reduction. Wind is now up to, I think, roughly 4.5% of our electricity production, and solar is about 1% or getting to 1%, but with a very, very rapid trajectory. And this is largely correlated with the tremendous cost reductions. We were talking earlier, and I said that even a few years ago, there was a lot of skepticism about reaching the target of a solar photovoltaic module costing 50 cents per watt. Now the only question is, when are we going to break through that number? And I think it's going to be within a year or two. We're going to be below that. This changes the game very, very substantially. And not on electricity production now, but electricity use. Another example, and a very similar technology underlying it, is LED lighting. Once again, costs have come down literally an order of magnitude in a short time, to the place where if you don't, frankly, replace your 60-watt incandescent with an LED, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. I mean, actually, maybe it's worth saying, in the lifetime of that LED versus the incandescents that you would need over 25,000 hours of operation, the energy savings alone are about $135 or $140 from that one light bulb over its or LED over its lifetime. So these technology changes and cost reduction have to emphasize over and over and over again, in the energy business, the goal of innovation is cost reduction. It's important because energy is a commodity. It's certainly important if we are going to see developing economies across the globe take part in the low carbon push.
Does it send a mixed message, though, when we are making so much progress on the renewable front? A lot of progress on the natural gas front, which is decarbonizing us to a certain extent. And at the same time, getting access and exploiting the Arctic, which the only reason why we really have access to that is climate change in the first place. So that's why this week's announcement, which was not under your department's direct purview, that was under the Interior Department's review, was so controversial and met with so much resistance by environmentalists who are otherwise cheering the Obama administration lately. How do you square that? Is it?
Well, I would refer you to the Department of the Interior for that,
Of course.
question. But if I comment more broadly on oil and what's happened in this country in the last several years, principally so-called shale oil or tight oil, I think it's really important to put in perspective that, first of all, we are having some success in lowering our dependence on oil, even as we increase our domestic oil production. So actually, we are now, in terms of percentage of imported oil, we are now back to where we were in like 1972. It's an amazing change. However, we still are major oil importers. So the oil production, what it's really done has been a big economic boost in terms of lowering imports. However, and our administration, the Obama administration, the Department of Energy, in no way does the availability of that oil resource deflected us from lowering our oil dependence in three major ways. One, much more efficient vehicles. That's true in CAFE standards that the president put in place that will double efficiency to 54 miles per gallon roughly by 2025. And the Department of Energy working on all the technologies that will allow that to happen. And I'm going to come back and mention an example. But second pathway, alternative fuels like next generation biofuels to displace oil. And third, vehicle electrification. All three we are working on very, very hard. On the first one, let me note in terms of a little technology innovation that a few weeks ago I got to test drive something that one of our laboratories, Oak Ridge, was engaged in, and it was for the 50th anniversary of the iconic Shelby Cobra sports car to 3D print it. This is a big 3D printer. And it's a small car, but still it's a big 3D printer. It was beautiful. It was very lightweight. It was fully electric. But the idea that these kinds of new manufacturing approaches are going to allow us to put out these kinds of technologies, including in this case a very efficient vehicle, I think is really exciting. I mean, that's kind of the stuff that our labs, just so you know, we have 17 national laboratories, so it's a huge national laboratory system pushing science and technology across all of our missions.
When can I get one?
Well, you know, this vehicle took about 6 weeks from beginning to end. I know there are people out there trying to think about the business model of the future, where you know you kind of will go in the morning to a book, mix and match, decide what car you want to print it up, spend a day looking at the cherry blossoms, and then in the evening go and pick up your car. And then when you're tired of that version, a couple of years later, go back, get it melted down, just print up a new one. It'll be great.
As long as you don't get the same printer errors that we get right now. And lastly, like, you know, and I think we were talking about this backstage. Everything that Elon Musk does goes crazy online, not just on Mashable, but anywhere. He has a huge social media presence, but people are fascinated by what Tesla is doing. The battery pack announcement, the Gigafactory that they've built in Nevada. Is this just part of the same context of renewable innovation, or do you see this as some sort of game changer in itself? Like, are we all going to be buying, you know, from Elon Musk tomorrow, or how big is this really?
Well, look, I think the directions, first of all, Elon is just enormously creative, obviously, and a very good marketer as well. But very good marketing also comes with very good, with good products and good design, right? So if I talk about the two elements, the vehicle and the home batteries, let's say, the Powerwall. Certainly, these directions are going to be a big deal. No question about it, in my view. I think the magic of the vehicle, and I should say that Department of Energy did give a loan guarantee of about $500 million on the Tesla vehicle, which helped them get going. It was completely paid back 1 week after I became secretary, so that was good. But I think the really interesting thing was the way the market segment was chosen, not to try to come into a kind of immediately into a mass market, but to instead produce, let's face it, a relatively high-priced but high-performance vehicle. As you know, some of the reviews, Consumer Reports or whatever it was, talked about it as the best vehicle they had driven, not the best electric vehicle, but the best vehicle. So it's a pretty spiffy machine, and the idea is that, so it's kind of a classic disruptive technology approach, right? With a market segment that then can grow as costs come down. And I do believe electric vehicles will have a major presence, certainly in a decade. Then with the storage battery, if you to sharpen your pencil, we need the cost to come down further. But the idea of having distributed storage is a very interesting one. Clearly, I think eventually a game changer. If we get a cost reduction of another factor of maybe 2 or 3, and it's got many uses. If we have more sophisticated regulation that gives price signals, then storage is a great way to do arbitrage, if you like, on the prices. But then integrating it with solar energy, distributed solar energy, is another big winner potentially. And of course, going back to Mr. Musk, he's not only involved in Tesla, he obviously helped found a solar company as well. And there are technology synergies there in terms of integrating variable solar with batteries. So, I think we're still, again, it's cost reduction, and I think as that comes, these are going to be pretty big game changers. And by the way, they're going to be game changers as well for things like current utility business models, which we are beginning to see already kind of the stresses in terms of the traditional utility business model having to be revisited, to have the valuation of services revisited. We don't really have a way typically in what consumers pay in rates for valuing storage, for valuing efficiency, for anyway, it's interesting.
Cool. Well, I mean, his car is not 3D printed at the moment, so I guess that's a big knock that we'll have to downgrade them in the Mashable ratings for. We'll see if he can get there.
Check out the Cobra.
Yeah, exactly. I think I saw a picture of you with it. It was a pretty nice looking car.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming and doing this, and I want to thank all of you for being here in being part of this conversation. We now have a nice networking and cocktail reception to reward you for getting through these discussions, and to continue the discussion, I think, outside, actually. So, thank you.
Great.